situations like this where we really hold our heads and say, my God, life is really hectic. It's really stressing me out right now. What am I to do next? And so it happens to all of us, I would guess. And look at this woman here with life, everything crashing down on her. And everything around her is crashing, everything behind her is crashing. Life is hectic. It's like, how can she even get out of this space? That is what stress does. Because one of the byproducts of stress is the weight of life as it constantly crushes us and tries to crash on us. And we try to look for ways to get out. What does this all mean? It means that if we are human, we are going to deal with these challenges. And my hope is that today we can begin to address the weight of stress. What does stress mean? And how is it that it can cause us so much distress? And how is it that it can be so weighty that it's difficult sometimes to get out of it? In this conversation, which I hope will be about an hour, maybe less, sorry, maybe just a little bit more than an hour, we can have a dialogue that I think will be engaged, a dialogue that I think we can all really take something away from. And so if you have felt like this person, or if you felt like the other person, you are in the right place. But one of the first things that I want to do, after making an introduction that I've just made, is for us to really look at what stress is. And so you will understand when I say what you are looking at is the impact of the stressors that this person is dealing with on that person. Because stress is really not what happens to us. Stress is how our body responds to the stressors. That is one reason why it can be very challenging, can be very difficult for us to overcome stress. Because everything that happens around us can be a stressor that, depending on how our body responds to it, it becomes stress that becomes the weight that's difficult for us to lift. So, how you know the difference between stress and stressor, I have indicated here that one way to know is, for example, stressors are unavoidable. For example, we go to work, we have to go to work. Work can be a stressor, but work is in itself not stress. Stress is avoidable. So the way that your body responds to the stressor, the way that my body responds to the stressor of work, is what will then constitute the stress that we will face. And the reason I say that stressors are unavoidable is that stressors are there. If we say we are going to drive on the road, we are going to drive on the road. It's a fact. It's a fact. It's not avoidable. We are going to drive on the road to get to our destination. But what is avoidable is how our body responds to being cut off by a driver who is reckless. The way that our body responds can be what produces the stress for us. We can identify stressors, work, relationships, everything else that happens in life. We can identify them. But stress in itself is not avoidable because it's not one thing that you just place in one place and then take it away when you want to. A stress is tangible. You can see it, you can touch it, you can say it, it's very clear. But stress is in itself not tangible. The stressor is palpable. You can touch it, you can feel it, but stress is not. As stressors are universally experienced. We all experience work, we all experience life, we all experience the weather. For example, if you live in some parts of the United States right now, it is really hot. It's unusually hot because of climate change. If you live in parts of Africa where some people have tuned in, where some people are watching us right now, either on Facebook or on YouTube or on LinkedIn, people are watching us. If you live in some parts of the world right now, because of climate change, there is much more intense heat than normal. So weather is universally experienced. But the way that our body responds to it is individualized. I would not respond to it the same way that you do. Therefore, for me, it can be stressful, and for someone else, it's not. And so we cannot solve stressors, but we can solve stress. So what does this all mean? It means a few things. Number one, that it is not the potential stressor. It is not a work. It's not a life event. It's not all of that. It's not a potential stressor that leads to stress. What leads to stress is how we handle the stressor. And also that stressors are a part of life. Stressors will always come. They live with us. And we very often make a mistake when we think of a stressor as stress. We very often mistake stressors for stress, and they're not exactly the same. So a stressor, again, is a factor that will lead to stress if not properly handled, which is why I make the argument that stress can be avoided. Stressors we cannot avoid, but we can anticipate the stressor that is going to cause us stress. So stress can completely destroy us by breaking down our body mechanisms. Completely, I said, destroy us by shattering our body mechanisms. So this is what I have put here. This is one of the things that these are the areas, it seems to me, where stress very often gets us, because these are stresses. For example, our relationships. Relationships can become a source of stress. A relationship can be a significant stressor. And these are the four main areas in my practice and in life generally. These are the four main areas where people experience a significant amount of stress: relationships, health, work, and finances. And if you can think of any other area where people experience, or where you experience stress, feel free to write it down. And you will find that those areas very often actually can fit into any of these four categories. And so what I have done here has been to show you that these stresses and what you get out of these stresses can produce stress for you, can produce stress for me, can produce stress for all of us. And what is also crucial here is that they are all interconnected. They're all interconnected. Let's think of relation, which is why you have arrows going both ways, from stress to health and back to, from relationships to health and back to relationships. The arrow is bidirectional. And so from health to finances or financial, the arrow is bidirectional. And so to work, it's bidirectional. And so back to relationships, they are all the same. For example, if we or someone that we love has a bad health diagnosis, someone we're in a relationship, our loved ones or ourselves, has a bad health diagnosis, it affects us and it can cause us stress, just as it causes the other person stress. Depending on how our body responds, how our bodies respond to that bad health news, and how we see that person dealing with the news of their health, of their diagnosis. And we worry sometimes about finances to deal with those health issues, finances to deal with our bills, and finances, and we have work that we do that's not paying us enough money. And the way that our bodies respond to that stressor can cause us a great deal of stress. But why is it important for us to have a discussion about stress? It doesn't even take a rocket scientist to actually point out why it's important to have a discussion about stress. Many, many reasons. Number one, stress, as I have tried to indicate since we've been talking, can have a significant impact on our physical health, can have a significant impact on our emotional health. And if you even look at this diagram, stress can even cause you to be less productive at work and reduce your financial stability and significantly affect your relationship with people. And stress can also significantly affect not only your health, not only your relationship with people, not only your work, but also indeed your finances. So it is important for us to have this discussion, and your productivity overall will be affected. And here in the United States, we know that over 1 million people are absent from work every day due to stress. We know that fact for the United States because record keeping is quite good here. But what is it like in countries, for example, in countries in Africa, where there is terrible leadership? People have to contend with what the leaders are not providing to the people. For example, people have to contend with bad roads, terrible traffic jams, poorly paid jobs, or no jobs at all. People have to contend with all of those major stressors. Just imagine the high level of stress that may be caused by all of that. So that leads me to even think of one thing that people will say. People will say, well, those are challenges, and everybody has to deal with challenges. And challenges are what some people call stress. But I'm here to tell you that there is actually a difference between challenge and stress. A challenge provides you a goalpost. A challenge is something that you want to work toward, to address and defeat. Therefore, a challenge actually strengthens you. A challenge enhances your experience. Stress, on the other hand, is not like that. Stress produces a destructive force that can actually ruin you in ways that a challenge would never do because you're working to solve a challenge. And stress is actually killing the individual, which is why I wrote the book Stress Kills many years ago. Stress, actually, we know, leads to a decrease in interest in work, a decrease in a decrease in interest in work, a decrease in level of commitment, palpable commitment in one's relationship, impacts one's health, and the emotional impact of health is significant. And we know that, again, in the United States, statistics show that over 60% of work absences occur due to psychological reasons that are associated with stress. And it doesn't matter where you live in the world, the impact of stress on family life is very significant. So these are some of the reasons why we should be talking about stress. And I will just say very quickly that some of the physical symptoms that have been associated with stress are listed here. Irritable bowel syndrome. These are some of the symptoms that have been associated with stress, which is one reason why we need to really pay attention. Anorexia and other eating disorders. High blood pressure. This is something that I am sure everyone can relate to, regardless of where you live. High blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, heartburn, ulcers, back pain, migraine headaches, These physical symptoms have been associated with stress, lightheadedness, upset stomach, nausea, indecisiveness, lightheadedness, upset stomach, nausea. And there is indecisiveness also that's been associated with a level of stress. And if you're looking at this PowerPoint that's in front of you and you're asking yourself, why is it that I have those in purple? Lightheadedness, upset stomach, nausea, and I just said indecisiveness. I should also add restlessness or inability to relax. Those two would also be in purple. And why would I have them in purple when I've had everything else in black? I've had them in purple because as a psychotherapist, I will tell you that those are some of the symptoms that we look for before we make a diagnosis of anxiety. That tells you how significant stress is, how impacting it can be to our bodies. If the same symptoms of stress are significant for a diagnosis of anxiety. And why do I have fatigue, poor concentration, loss of appetite or increased appetite, and weight loss or weight gain? Why do I have them in red? And also, I would add the irritability and sleep disturbances, which I would also have in red. Why would I have them in red? Because those are also symptoms of depression. Therefore, it is important for me as a psychotherapist, when someone comes to me and I am trying to make a diagnosis, to help me develop a treatment plan to treat them, to make sure that I also explore the levels of stress, the stressors in their lives. So you need to think about all of these things. And I hope that as we are having this conversation, as I am having this discussion, that someone out there is also saying to themselves, maybe this is what I have been feeling. Maybe stress is responsible for what I'm feeling. Or maybe stress is responsible for what I'm seeing. What would irritability look like, for example? Someone gets very angry very quickly. And you say this person is upset for just this little thing. The person jumps very quickly to conclusion and completely, just very quickly, misunderstands the point you are making. And they do not necessarily misunderstand it. It is the stress that it is a stressor for them. And they are in the throes of a stressful episode. That is why they are reacting like that. And if you see that, it is important to actually try to jump into some action and take action. So, how does one really go about dealing with this? There are multiple ways, but what I want to do, first of all, is to actually I will ask a few questions, and I will just slow down for one moment between each question. Or if you have a paper and pen where you are, I would just say it as not as an instruction, but as a request of something that I think you should do, because this will be helpful for some kind of self-diagnosis. Number one, I would ask you to write down or think of exactly what is going on in four major areas of your life. What is happening in four major areas of your life? I will stop for a few seconds and have you think about it. Number one, what is happening in the area of health in your life or in the life of someone that you know? What is happening as far as health? How about relationships? What is happening in that person's or in your area or my area, my relationships? What is happening? What about my work, my employment, Or if I am retired, the employment of someone that's very close to me, what is happening there? And by the way, how are my finances? And after thinking about all of those together, my next question is, and let's play this game, let's do this exercise. Describe how this is making you feel. How is this, how are these things, how, all of these experiences. So, how is all of this making you feel? So, for example, how do you feel when you think about going to work? How do you feel when you think about going home after work? How do you feel when you think about your medical diagnosis or your medical condition or the medical condition of a family member or a loved one, a friend? And so, what happens when you feel this way? And how do you feel when you leave the environment where you are experiencing these feelings? And do you feel that you have any control over your feelings or emotions? And if not, why? I would actually like to offer what I just said about the questions that I've asked, or the instructions, what I have asked you to do in the last few minutes. I would actually like to offer those questions I'll send those questions to everyone who is here in the room, to everyone else who's watching on YouTube or watching on LinkedIn and Facebook. Of course, I will not be able to send that to you because I don't have your email address, but if you send me a message, I'll make sure that I get it to you. And the reason I'll do that is because I think that you can use these questions, this exercise that I just offered. I would like you to have them so that you can use them for your own self. I want to say self-diagnosis, but instead I will say for your own reminder, for your own self-check. If you are feeling the blues, to ask yourself those questions. What is going on in this major area of my life right now? How is it making me feel? And be honest with yourself when you do it. What happens when I feel this way? And how do I feel when I leave this environment where I'm experiencing these feelings right now? Do I feel happier or do I feel worse? And what is happening when I feel this way? And do I have any control over these feelings? So I will be very happy right after this to send these questions out so that you keep this. I'll send it as a slide or something. So you keep it and use it for your own self-check whenever you feel the blues. As I indicated earlier, we all feel the blues unless you're not human. We all feel the blues at one time or another. But the challenge is to make sure that we do not allow what we are feeling to become stress, because that will then become really significant, a challenge for us. So now I'm going to provide some strategies for dealing with this, with stress. I would say, number one, and again, I'll be happy to send this to, and I'll be happy to send this to people. So I'll say that number one, it's important to know your body. The body is yours. You know your body, but how well do you really know your body? How well do we really know our bodies? If we are going to deal with stress or prevent stress from overcoming us or prevent stressors from becoming stress that will significantly challenge and ruin us, it is important that we know our bodies, know how your body feels when things are not right. Occasionally scan your body. I actually, in my book, Stress Skills, I provided a way to scan your body. But I'm currently developing an online course on stress where I will also be presenting a way to scan your body. But I'll also say that if you are one who goes for a massage every now and again, which I actually do recommend that you go for a massage whenever you can, there are stress balls in your body that do appear when you're experiencing significant stressors in your life that can or that have become stress. So occasional body scans are important, and knowing your body is important. And as I said, I'm going to send, I am adding this to my online course, so people know how to scan their bodies to know when stress is about to get them. Have healthy habits generally, or healthy habits. Exercise is crucial. Diet is crucial. Know what you eat and when you eat it. Avoid social isolation, because if you're socially isolated, it becomes easier for stress to get you. Become very sensitive. Increase your sensitivity to your environment. Be conscious of what's happening around you so that you know when to respond and how to respond, so that the stressors do not just creep in on you or creep up on you and overtake you. Take a close, honest look at the impact of your work or the things that you're engaged in, your work, your finances, the groups that you participate in, whether they are church groups, whether they are really groups or local association groups. Take a close look at the impact of those things on you, the impact of those things on your health and your overall life. Identify your feelings about this situation. Monitor your daily activities. One of the things that I try to encourage people to do is to track their activities for the day by saying, write down some of the major things that happen in your life that you do between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m., and then between 9 a.m. and 12 noon, and then between 12 noon and 1, between 1 and 5, and so on. I break the day down. And I say, try and track what you do from Monday through Friday, and then let's take another look at them. And if you notice significant gaps or inconsistencies in what you do, then you need to begin to ask yourself, why are there these significant gaps? Or if you find that your level of productivity has dropped or is not significant, it might be a time to take a look at yourself and say, what is happening in my life that's producing this low level productivity? And identify your goals and values. The importance of that is because it helps us to make sure that we stay close to our goals and values. Because when you are in a very stressful period, when stress is engaging much of your life, it becomes very difficult to remain focused on your goals and your values. So you should also build what I call an upward spiral of motivation and energy through pleasure and mastery. What I mean by that is that you increase the levels of engagement, not just with other people, but also with yourself, that you build more things and engage in more things that you find pleasurable, to give yourself more pleasure. Give yourself more mastery in things that may be hobbies for you. So all of this leads to one fact, that you constantly engage in something to get your mind off the impact that stressors in your life can significantly build up and attack you. I think it's that journaling is a good thing. You can journal. As a matter of fact, now there are apps on your phone. I think everybody has a smartphone now. There are apps on smartphones that are journaling apps where you don't even have to write. You can just talk into your journal. You can video yourself journaling. It's important to journal how your day is going, and journal the things that bring you up when you're down. Journal about those things. Schedule your activities. Purposely make plans for tomorrow today. Don't wait for tomorrow to plan for tomorrow. Plan for tomorrow today before you go to bed, so that tomorrow there is a reason to break out of the period, out of the stress, and problem solve around potentially difficult things. So if you know the stressors in your life, you plan how you are going to deal with them before they become so stressful for you. And above all, well, I wouldn't say above all, but very crucial it is also to maintain a relationship with your doctor. And if this becomes overwhelming, don't just stay and be overwhelmed. I say seek professional help. Seeking professional help is really very crucial in all of this. And so I did say that it's going to be, I will keep my discussion to a very brief time so that I would not want to keep us here longer than an hour, maximum 1.5 hours. So I am going to tell people to ask questions. And if you're not shy and you want to come on the screen with me, I'll be very happy to bring you on to ask your question. Otherwise, I will ask any questions that anybody has already asked on the screen. Right. I see a question. How does one cope with stress in an environment that is predominantly stressful? How do you silence the stressors? You cannot silence stressors, but what you can do is you can reduce yourself the potential impact of the stressors on you. In other words, remember the way I defined stress. Stress is the way that your body responds to stressors. So the stressors you cannot control, but you can control the way your body responds to it so that you do not become stressed. Let's take, for example, do you mind if I bring you on the screen so that we can have a discussion about this? Yeah, but in any case, even if I don't bring you on the screen, so let's just say that you have a stressor. You know what the stressors are. As I said, you cannot silence the stressor. But in talking about the strategies just now, one of the things that I said was planning how to deal with that stressor. The most important thing is to center yourself. Find a quiet space in your living area. Find a quiet space where you practice whatever it is. You scan your body and you practice whatever it is that helps you to ground yourself. There are many exercises for doing that, and yoga is definitely one of them. But there are many other exercises. There is what we call rational emotive therapy. There's self-talk, where you are talking to yourself about how you are going to stay strong, even as you face these challenges. And as you talk to yourself and you are talking yourself out of a potential defeat. And so it is really possible then it then becomes really possible to prevent this. And I hope that explanation is clear to you, Mr. Ohachu. So what that means really, and is that we all need to remember that if it doesn't matter how crazy a place is, we can always find a spot in our living environments where we can find some quiet space to center ourselves and create a situation where we can calm ourselves from being overcome by stress, even in the most stressful circumstances. Is there another question? Well, I see, yeah, it makes sense to me now why you developed the online course on depression that I have found to be so valuable, and I have shared it with my contacts. Yeah, thank you very much, Miss Archer. Yes, I developed the course on depression, the online course on depression, and anyone can actually get it because I wanted to provide people an opportunity to handle these things by themselves, to handle depression by themselves, unless and but to know when it's becoming overwhelming, that they can then definitely seek professional help because it's really important to actually take care of ourselves before we are overwhelmed by these challenges. Is there another question? Maybe there is a question that I don't see. Are people shy to ask questions? And I see, okay. Does anyone have any additional thoughts? And okay, I answer that question. Okay, how do you deal with stressors from all angles? For example, unstable relationships. It is important, first of all, to understand that. Okay, I also see the question, how can we get your course? So, how do you deal with stressors from all angles, for example, relationships? The strategies that I have provided are very crucial. They can help you deal with stress from all angles. But it's really important, first of all, not to be in denial. There is always this segment of society that tells you that if you acknowledge that you are stressed, if you acknowledge that you're depressed, then you are weak. That is really a myth. If you acknowledge that you're stressed, you acknowledge that you're depressed, you acknowledge all of that, that is the first step toward healing. So if you acknowledge that you're experiencing relationship stress, that's the first step toward healing. The next step is to talk about it. Talk about it with the person that you trust. Mind you, I said the person that you trust. I did not say a whole group of people that you trust, because the last thing that you want is for people to broadcast what you're dealing with, especially when it comes to relationships. Because that in itself, when it gets out and it becomes really embarrassing, that's one reason many people don't tell. Understand the people that you trust, the people that will lift you up. Have that discussion with them. And if it's a relationship problem, and you know that it's one that you are trying to actually address with your partner and it's not working, you may want to seek professional help. Professional help is really crucial in dealing with relationship situations because a lot of the clients that I see are couples, and one of the things that you want to do first is to try and stabilize the relationship, even when it doesn't seem like it's a crisis. The fact that you're dealing with a relationship issue means that it's unstable. That question actually used the word unstable relationships. So the first thing that a professional would want to do is to try to stabilize the relationship, and from there it can build back up. Um, Somebody asked, is this channel about psychology or mental health? I am a mental health practitioner. I'm a psychotherapist. And so, yes, I do a lot of work that have to do with that. And you can actually look me up on my website, which is www.integrativeruminations.com. Integrativeruminations.com. Or you can send me a message. I know that question is from YouTube. You can actually send me a YouTube through a message through my YouTube channel, which you just did actually, and I will respond to that question on YouTube and send you more information. And so I have a question that says, where do you start solving the problem of, let me see. Okay, it says, where do you start solving the problem of stress? From when you live in an environment full of stressors. You start from your own space. The environment is full of stressors, but you have a space in your life that is calm. That is where you start from. You go into your calm space, you center yourself, and begin to use some of the strategies that I have already described. And that's where you start from. Your own little space. Start with yourself. And there's a question that says, if your productivity is negatively impacted by stressors you have no control over, for example, in African countries where electricity supply is not so good, bad network supply, or bad roads, how can one deal with that? You cannot change those things. They're there, and they are stressors. They are constant stressors that you cannot change. But always think of the fact, always remember that I said that the stress is how your body responds to those stresses. So the way you deal with those stresses that you cannot change, those are big things, is to say to yourself, I am not going to be able to change it. But what I can do is change my own environment, is change the way that my body responds to it. I'm not going to let it get to me. And I'm not going to let it get to me. And this is how. The way that I'm not going to let it get to me is by using these strategies that I have described. As a matter of fact, if you actually have my online course on depression, on how to cope with depression, that will also provide you the strategies that will be very beneficial in dealing with stress before my online course on stress comes out, which should be out in the next few weeks. Somebody asked before, how does one get that course on depression? Here is the link. And because it's interesting that because everyone knows, and I'm sorry to all of those who already bought the course at the price that it was, but because I was getting so many questions about, oh, how can we get a discount and how can we afford it because of where we live and so on, I actually reduced it for the purpose of today's discussion. I reduced the price to it's only $49. Now that's really affordable. I have presented like a mini course. It's just $49 now, but that's the site where to get it. And so it's called How to Cope with Stress. And you can share that site with everyone. And so the other question is, so Dr. Ohiro, as a young student all the way in Nigeria, how can I manage stress when it comes to my education, career, and family problems as a first son too? This is what I'll say. I like to work with young students because, as you probably know, I am in academia. I would encourage you to. I don't know if you know anybody who knows me. Have them give you my email address and send me an email so that I will be happy to mentor you through your education, mentor you through this process. That's Mr. Paul Onora Ifechuku. So I'll be happy to mentor you. And yes, those challenges, those stresses that you have mentioned can be significant challenges. career, family problems, and and being the first son as well. That is a culture that I come from myself. I understand what you're talking about, and I'll be happy to mentor you through this, um, through your education and through this. It is possible to deal with those challenges, however big those stresses are. And it's going to be important for you to talk to people who are older, who have experience, and I'll be happy to support you. Um, so somebody wrote, I am enjoying this topic. Please keep it coming. Knowledge is power. And yes, we'll continue to have this conversation. And the question too is, there's a question there that says, how does the body react to stress? The body reacts differently for each person. But when Hensley, who coined the word stress, it was in 1972, he actually talked about an organism. He talked about an organism responding to stress and how levels of stress can actually destroy various parts of one's body. Imagine this. I said earlier that the responses to stress, some of them are actually the symptoms that we look for when we diagnose anxiety, including generalized anxiety disorder. And some of them too are the symptoms that are also consistent with a depression, with a diagnosis of depression. So imagine really that sentence that I just made, and think of the destructive influences of anxiety and depression to the body. And think about that. So you can see then how stress and anxiety, how stress really can break down the various aspects of the individual's body. I also discussed the physical symptoms of stress, so that stress is not only physically killing one, stress is also emotionally killing the person. Think of those symptoms. Think about what it's like, for example, when you just have a migraine, which comes from stress, or back pain, which comes from stress. Think about that. And so it's gradually killing you installmentally. And that's how the body can respond to stress. Someone asked me to present my email address. And yes, thank you, Professor Genti, for actually writing it already. I'm grateful. And that's it. And so another question, isn't it self-denial to act as though one is not being impacted by obvious stressors? Absolutely. It is a denial, and that's what I was saying before. But very often, some of us want to deny it because we don't want to be seen as weak. But it is denial because we all are impacted by stressors. The challenge there, though, is to make sure that the impact of the stressors, the impact does not become stress that's difficult or impossible for you to overcome. We're all impacted. And the question is, that question is from YouTube. Hi, are you some kind of mental health expert? Yes, I am a mental health expert with a PhD. And I've been in clinical practice for 31 years. I have been practicing psychotherapy for 31 years. I'm also a research scholar. So yes, I am all of that. Did I miss any questions? There's a chance that I have. Maybe any questions from the top? Yes, somebody wrote stress from work, health, and all aspects all at the same time. Yes, it can happen. And it can also happen in stages where if you don't deal with stress from work. Mind you, as far back as 1996, the World Health Organization declared work stress as a pandemic. And so if you don't deal with the impact, with the stressful impact of work on your life, it can affect your health. reduce your level of productivity, which then affects your finances, which then can affect your relationships. So you see, it can go full circle. And so I see it is important for individuals to identify and educate each other on this important topic. Keep it coming, Dr. Ohiro Oni-Eseleh. We need these conversations. Thank you very much, Ms. Asgarali. I know you're a colleague, you're a social work practitioner. And someone said, can I ask you something other than stress specifically? Yes, go ahead. That's a question from YouTube. And if you have any other questions, anybody, or if somebody is interested in me bringing them to the studio to be part of, to be seen, if you are not shy being seen and you want to come on, I'll be happy to bring you onto camera as well. And so, yes, so Doctor, we should be getting such seminar often. We'll appreciate it if it is tabulated monthly or weekly. If anyone agrees that we should do this monthly, and just say yes, just write yes on the chat, and then we can, and it doesn't have to be me every month. I can bring a colleague to talk about a different topic. Great. Okay, somebody wrote, yes, oh, thank you. Oh, everybody's writing, yes, that is good. So we can have this monthly. Somebody wrote, I wanted to ask, that I really dislike this one person, and it's really affecting my life at this point. I don't know what to do. This is the kind of question that I really would like to take off this stage. If you want to send me, okay, since you have sent a message on YouTube, I will look for that question, and maybe I can find a way to connect with you and we can have this conversation. But one thing that you need to really ask yourself too is your relationship with, because there are many questions that I would want to ask, which is why I like to take this off grid. Number one, what is your relationship with this person that you dislike? And is it someone that you can completely avoid? And are they causing you significant stress? Because these questions will lead me to provide you with a prescription of how to deal with this. So at this point, I know it's going to be an hour, and I like to thank everyone for coming. And I hope to see you again very soon. And we have all said we shall have this conversation monthly. So I look forward to doing it again in 1 week. And for those who have asked about my course, once again, that is a site. That's my online course on depression, and so we will have that discussion. And so I will respond to you, Star Baby. We'll have that conversation. So, how can we reach out to young Nigerians, especially those in the higher institutions that face a high level of stress, mentally and financially? Invite them to forums like this so that we can all have this dialogue and they can take away some skills and some strengths as well. And we can also develop a strategy to deal with that, because it's really my hope that we can be of more help to young people, especially young college students. And I thank you all very much for coming, and I will leave you to enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Have a good day, and for those of you who are in faraway countries where it's already nighttime, have a good night. Thank you.